Hey, it's Gabe with API Nation. Today I'm going to show you how you can sync dotloop with ActiveCampaign so that all those clients, all those contacts you're doing business with in dotloop, anybody you've put into a loop, can automatically get synced into ActiveCampaign. You can put them on a drip campaign, an automation there. It's going to allow you to use these two apps together as one, and it's super easy to set up. Let me show you how. The first thing you're going to do is go to apination.com. There you're going to click on Discover Connections. That's going to take you to all the apps you can connect at API Nation. You can scroll down and look around, and if there's any logos for apps you're using currently, just click through and you can see all the connections for that. So here's dotloop. I'm going to click on that. It's going to show me all the automations I have for dotloop, including ActiveCampaign. So I'm going to click on that one, and it says I can connect a few different ways dotloop and ActiveCampaign. So the first one is ActiveCampaign to dotloop. That's going to send people from my ActiveCampaign into dotloop, which is great. It's going to make making loops quicker because all the contacts I have in ActiveCampaign will automatically get synced into dotloop, so I can just start creating those loops, and the contacts are available there to assign into the loop. So that's one thing I can do. You can also send people from the address book in dotloop into ActiveCampaign. So in dotloop, you have everybody in kind of a people area, and all those people you can have synced into ActiveCampaign. That way you can start sending them emails, a newsletter, or put them on automations. And then this is kind of the big one, dotloop contacts from loops into ActiveCampaign. So anybody you've assigned to a loop, you can have synced into ActiveCampaign, and that's probably what you're going to use for automations. If you've assigned somebody as a buyer or a seller in your loops, you can have them dropped into an automation in ActiveCampaign, specially for a buyer or seller, and you can kind of walk them through the transaction, or wait until the transaction is completely over and then have that automation in ActiveCampaign send them emails for the next 6, 9, 12, 36 months, just kind of following up and staying top of mind. So those are the three automations available. I'm going to show you how to set up this sync. I'm going to go with this dotloop contact loops in ActiveCampaign. Click on Activate. And the first step is to just go ahead and sign into API Nation. If you don't have an API Nation account, no problem. You just click this Create One. Or you can sign in with your Google account. I'm going to do that this time. Sign in with Google. There we go. So the next step, connect dotloop. Pretty simple. Hit Connect. It's going to take you out to dotloop. You're just going to sign in and approve the connection. All right, dotloop's connected. Now we are going to connect ActiveCampaign. Hit Connect. And you can see it's asking for three things here. It's asking for a label, and this is just what you want to name the connection. I just named mine after me, Gabe Company. You can name it after yourself, your team, your office. The connection is really just in case you're managing multiple ActiveCampaign accounts. That way you can tell the difference. So if you're in charge of all the agents' accounts in your office, you can label them after each agent so you can tell whose is whose. That's pretty unusual, but it does happen. So the next thing you're going to need is the user URL and the user key. So you saw I was getting ActiveCampaign ready because I'm going to need to go in there to find this URL and key. So in ActiveCampaign, to get that URL and key, you're going to click on Settings down here in the corner, and then you're going to click on Developer. There it is, kind of in the middle. And you can see there's the URL. Hit this button to copy it. Go back to API Nation. Paste it in there using Command V or Control V. Go back. Get the key. Same thing. Go back. Paste it using Command V or Control V. That's it. We're going to connect. Okay. So the sync is now up. We are creating it right now. A couple things to double check. I'm actually want to sync participants. That's the people in the loops. So that's what I'm going to choose. I'm going to choose the people who are participating in the loop. If you choose person, it's going to just sync the people over from your address book. But like I said, we're trying to get the people from the loops in there. It's going to ask you whose loops do you want to sync? And you can choose all the profiles, just your profiles, totally up to you. And then these people you're syncing over, where in ActiveCampaign would you like them to go? What list? So you can send them just into ActiveCampaign, go by default, or you can put them on a list. I would create a list maybe for buyers or sellers, or something else. just dotloop clients and sync them there. Just keep it nice and neat. You could also, if you want, just drop them on an automation. Finally, you can have them tagged as they come over. So maybe I want to tag them as, dotloop or transaction or something like that as they come into ActiveCampaign. Last thing, you're going to choose your subscription plan. So we have a yearly plan for offices or agents, and we also have a monthly plan. You're going to save quite a bit if you go with the yearly plan, but just choose one and then hit subscribe. This will create the sync. Cool, we've created the sync, but you can see it's not yet active. We still have to activate it. We're just going to do a final check before we activate this sync. So I'm going to scroll down here. We're sending all the people from these profiles, and you might just have your own profile, especially if you're an agent. It might just show your own individual profile. And they're going to the default list in ActiveCampaign. And then here's the filter. So this is kind of where the power is for these syncs. So you could filter over exactly who's coming over from these loops. And the big one here is role. So you can choose role contains agent, and you can have this send over every agent who was involved with the transaction through dotloop, and then you can kind of build up a database full of agents if you want to share listings and stuff like that. Or you can choose, role contains buyer, or role contains seller, or role contains attorney, and you can build up little lists of all the buyers, the sellers, the agents, the attorneys, the plumbers, any of those roles, inspectors. So then you can have them ready to go in ActiveCampaign, organized, and you can build some automations that's going to effectively communicate how you guys can work together in the future. I'm going to go with role contains buyer. Then you can see it's going to sync over the email address for that person, their phone number, their first name, and their last name. That looks great. I'm going to go to the top and activate the sync. And actually, before I activate it, I'm going to change the name here because we're sending over not just dotloop contacts, we're sending over dotloop buyers into ActiveCampaign. So there we go. Activate the sync. Cool. Sync's now active. And if I wanted to do the same thing for sellers, I would just hit clone. And instead of the filter looking for people who were buyers, I would just change that filter. Go back to role contains sellers. Save. And activate this sync. Obviously change the name. And you're going to want to double check exactly what the role is called in dotloop for the people you're trying to pull out. Make sure it's case correct. You got the right case and everything in there. That way we pull out the correct people. Activate this sync. Cool. So that is sending over people from your loops into ActiveCampaign to put them on email automations. If you want to send over just everybody, you can go back to that dotloop page, set up the ActiveCampaign sync, and this one would just be everybody from your address book. This guy right here, dotloop contacts and address book, activate this. The nice thing is we've already connected both these apps, so we're just going to select those connections. It's going to pass us right on through, and then it's just going to ask us to configure this. And this one is going to be syncing dotloop persons in ActiveCampaign. That's just everybody you have in dotloop in kind of that contacts area. And you can tell it to sync all people, or you can uncheck this box, and then it's only going to sync people from today going forward. So anybody you add from now on, it'll sync. I usually want to sync everybody I have in dotloop, and this will also continue to sync today going forward. So that's usually what I do. Go ahead and choose a list. If you want, choose an automation, assign a tag. It says choose your subscription plan, but you should know if you've subscribed to any of these dotloop and ActiveCampaign syncs, that covers you for all of the dotloop and ActiveCampaign syncs. So when you're looking at those 3 syncs available, ActiveCampaign to dotloop address book contacts, and dotloop loop contacts in ActiveCampaign, all of those are covered under the one subscription. So you buy one subscription, and then it's just basically an all you can sync between these 2 apps. This all looks good. I'll activate this sync. And then, yeah, if you do want to go back, and then you can create a 2-way sync, doing that same thing, dotloop to ActiveCampaign, but this time we are sending from ActiveCampaign to dotloop. sharing all those contacts we've gathered in ActiveCampaign into dotloop to make creating loops quicker. Sync all contacts on first run, sure. Choose that same subscription, subscribe. And then again, you can filter by any of those things from ActiveCampaign. Name, first name, email. The mapping, you get the first name, the last name, the email, and the phone number. That all looks good. I'm gonna go to the top and activate this. So that's it. I now have 3 syncs. Actually, I have 4 syncs up and running. I have buyers from loops, sellers from loops, just all my contacts going into ActiveCampaign, and then ActiveCampaign sending people back to dotloop. So now anytime I make a change or add a contact anywhere, it could be triggering some awesome automations without me having to do much work. So I can just add somebody as a buyer to a loop and know that's going to trigger them getting put on my buyer email automation in ActiveCampaign to send them all the information I'd want to get a buyer to walk them through the transaction and then to follow up with them for months and years in the future. So that's it. That's how you sync dotloop to ActiveCampaign. It's going to make you a much better communicator, marketer. You're going to be right there with your client every step of the way through these email automations that come right alongside dotloop. And it's also just going to save you a ton of time. You don't have to copy, paste, import, export. All the contacts are just shared automatically. If you have any questions or need any assistance, give us a phone call, shoot us an email. We're API Nation, connecting the world's applications. We love doing this stuff.